countless places around the world are allegedly haunted, some of these even displaying some pretty compelling evidence. Today, we've compiled a list of 5 of the most haunted locations from around the world. Number 5. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia, Pennsylvania was once a quiet blue-collar mining community. However, in May of 1962, that suddenly and rapidly changed after a landfill caught fire, sending the entire town up in smoke. The town's landfill was located just above an abandoned mine. Because of this, flames and ash from the fires were easily seeping through the trash into the ground below, eventually causing one of the most notorious coal fires in American history. The townspeople debated for years about what to do regarding the fires. However, after a 12-year-old boy was swallowed by a sinkhole because of the fire, Congress decided to allocate $42 million to relocate the town of Centralia. A mandatory evacuation was set in place in 1992, which helped most families relocate to cities just outside of Centralia. All but 11 residents decided to leave the town. In 2002, Centralia's zip code was finally discontinued, and in 2010, the town's remaining 10 residents reached a deal with the government, allowing them to live out the remainder of their lives there. It's estimated that only 5 people still live in Centralia, and after they pass, their homes are expected to be destroyed by the government. It's uncertain exactly how many residents died as a direct result of the fire. However, visitors to the town, which is now closed to the public, have mentioned hearing screams coming from beneath the ground, as well as images of a fire-breathing demon being seen by a few others. The town is widely believed to be haunted by the souls of those who died there, as well as those who were forcibly removed from their homes. Number 4. Velisa Axe Murder House. The Velisa Axe murders were a series of murders that took place on June 9th and 10th in 1912. The 6 members of the local Moore family, as well as 2 guests, were found bludgeoned in the Moores' home. All 8 victims, including 6 children, were found to have died from severe head wounds resulting from an axe. Over 100 years later, the murders remain unsolved. The murders spurred an investigation that lasted nearly 10 years, though local police couldn't find enough concrete evidence to send anyone to prison. The victims were discovered around 7 a.m. on June 10th, after a neighbor had noticed the family had never come out to do their morning chores. The neighbor, Mrs. Peckham, knocked on the family's door, but no one answered. She then attempted to go in, but the door was locked. Mrs. Peckham then called Ross Moore, a family member who had a spare key. Once Ross had arrived, he entered the house to discover the family had been murdered. Police were called to the scene where they discovered a murder weapon, an axe belonging to Josiah Moore, the man of the house. Investigators believe that all of the victims had been asleep when they were killed, aside from Lena Stillinger, one of the guests in the home. Over the next few years, investigators found numerous leads on the case, though none with enough evidence to lead to a proper conviction. In the years since the murders, numerous visitors have reported paranormal activity within the house, including illuminated floating orbs, disembodied voices, and unexplained drafts. The house has been investigated by numerous paranormal crews, most of whom agree that the house is home to some very restless spirits. Number 3. Beechworth Asylum. Beechworth Asylum is considered one of the most paranormal locations in the world. Officially known as the Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum, the building is currently a decommissioned hospital, previously used to house mental patients in the 1800s. When Beechworth first opened, it housed an approximate 1,200 patients at full capacity. During its 128 years of operation, it's believed that at least 128 patients met their deaths within the asylum walls. Its doors finally closed to patients in 1995, and shortly afterward, it was repurposed as a university. Because of the building's disturbing past, it's vastly believed to be the home of many spirits. The most common ghost reported in the asylum is that of a nurse named Matron Sharp. Visitors reported seeing Matron's spirit in rooms that were previously the home of electroshock patients, though more recently she's been seen in the dormitory, which is now a part of a university computer room. Another common spirit to see in the building is that of Tommy Kennedy, who was a chef in the asylum. Kennedy actually died in the kitchen, which has now been renovated as a theater. His ghost has been seen multiple times in the room, and guests have reported feeling their clothes being tugged on or being poked in the ribs. The Beechworth Asylum has a truly gruesome past. The asylum was most notably known for its use of the electroshock treatment. These treatments would oftentimes cause patients' teeth to shatter, muscles and ligaments to snap, and even cause bones to break, all without any type of sedative. Patients were fully awake and coherent the entire time. In the areas of the building in which these treatments were carried out, paranormal experts have noted seeing the ghost of a young girl, who they believe was likely a patient or a relative of a patient in the hospital. Number 2. the Titanic. We all know the story of the Titanic, but just to give you a bit of a refresher, it was a ship that was built so solid that its engineers claimed it to be unsinkable, though on its very first journey, it sank, killing nearly all of those aboard. Though, as a side note, in recent years, information has been released stating that ships had passed by around the time the Titanic began to sink. These ships received the Titanic's distress calls but chose to ignore them. This horrific decision caused over 1,500 people to lose their lives. But let's get back to the story at hand. Over the years, many relics from the Titanic have been retrieved from its wreckage. Many of these artifacts have made their way into museums around the world. The Titanic Artifact Exhibition is one such museum. Since the museum's opening, employees and guests have claimed to witness paranormal activity within the building. According to the museum's website, these paranormal encounters have ranged from the feeling of being watched to actual ghost sightings. One of these strange encounters involved a photo of Bruce Ismay. As a morning crew was opening the exhibit, they noticed a photo of Bruce which had fallen off of the wall. No one had been in the building the night before, so this seemed quite odd. When the manager reviewed the surveillance footage from the night before, he saw that the photo had randomly begun to wiggle, and then fall into the floor with no one in sight. However, this isn't the only occurrence that employees have noticed. Staff members have also reported seeing the apparition of a woman in a black dress with a white collar, with her hair in a bun. A worker once saw a woman fitting this description walking down the grand staircase. He found this to be odd as there were no guests in the building at the time, and no other workers in the area. He turned and asked the woman if she would like him to take her photo, but received no reply. He shrugged it off and continued working, though he had a strange feeling of being watched. He then turned around to see the woman standing behind him. He asked if she would like her photo to be taken, but again received no reply. She then walked away and vanished, never to be seen again. Number 1. LaLaurie House. Marie Delphine McCarty was a New Orleans resident and alleged serial killer from the mid-1800s. She's most widely known for her likely involvement in the torture and murder of several household slaves. While living in the New Orleans area, McCarty married on 3 separate occasions, twice becoming widowed. She was an upperclassman in the area and was heavily involved in her community, typically being held with high regard. However, on April 10, 1834, that all changed. On April 10th, a house fire broke out at the McCarty's mansion. Workers arrived on the scene to attempt to extinguish the fire when they found multiple slaves bound in her attic. These slaves had been subjected to unspeakable forms of torture, and some were even reported to have died and been buried in the backyard. If you're a fan of the show American Horror Story, there's actually an entire story arc written about this event, and many of the forms of torture displayed in the show actually took place in this woman's attic. It was known amongst locals that McCarty treated her slaves very poorly, though at the time this wasn't technically illegal. After all, these slaves were legally recognized as property. However, on one such occasion, a few of Miss McCarty's neighbors actually witnessed a 12-year-old girl fall from the McCarty's roof to her death when jumping out of a window in an attempt to escape punishment. Lawyers were called to the scene and found McCarty guilty of cruelty, and 9 of her slaves were taken away, though one of her family members quickly claimed the slaves as her own and returned them to Miss McCarty shortly thereafter. When the fire broke out in April, and rescuers found out about McCarty's mistreated slaves, news quickly spread, causing an angry mob that ultimately forced her out of town and overseas to France, where it's believed that she spent the rest of her life. When the slaves were rescued and questioned, her cook stated that she had set the fire in an attempt to commit suicide in order to escape Miss McCarty's torture. Circumstances surrounding Miss McCarty's death remain unclear. Some say that she may have died as early as 1942, pointing to a grave marker in the Paris, France area that appears to show Miss McCarty's name, though Paris public records seem to indicate that McCarty died as late as 1949. Following the mob and portions of the house becoming damaged by the fire, the house remained vacant until 1836 and was fully restored sometime before 1888. In the years following, the house is used as a public high school, a music conservatory, a teen refugee retreat, a bar, and a furniture store, amongst a few other things. The house has more recently been renovated as an apartment complex, and residents have reported hearing disembodied voices as well as apparitions of slaves in the areas of the home where the attic used to be. The building is known as being one of America's most haunted locations, and is a popular tourist attraction in the New Orleans area. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.